Good evening. I now what's the word I'm looking for? Thank you.
Convene.
Now reconvene the session from closed session. We're hereby called to order again. Thank you for your patience. We actually do watch the clock and we try, but you know, we just wind up talking a little longer than we think when we start. So thank you again for your patience. Anything to report, Mr. City Attorney?
No, Madam Mayor, there were no reportable items from closed session this evening.
Okay. Okay, so our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Do we have an invocation as well? Yes. So if you would remain standing after the invocation. And Mr. Miller, would you like to lead us this time?
Face the flag and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's always an honor to come here before all of you people. I can't recognize you, Mayor, and you City Councilman, because you get a lot of flack out there sometimes for doing a good job. We want you to know we love you anyway. Okay?
Thank you. Right back at you.
Thank you. And our staff here is bar none. It's the best. We have really been blessed in this community, and I've been here almost 30 years, and it's been phenomenal, and we can't thank you people enough. I want to start it off that way. Lord, we ask for you to come between all of us this evening and keep us calm, keep us cool. And just thank you for the opportunity for all to come and gather here today. We ask your hand of blessing upon this meeting, and we ask that you would guide and direct our meeting so that it's full of wisdom, productivity, and respect for one another. And we thank you for all the accomplished works we have done in this community. And I want to bless our most first responders that are going to be recognized here this evening. We'd like to have you come close to them and protect them in the future, Lord. And we ask for this in your name. Amen.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Okay, we have some presentations. Let's start with Capistrano Unified School District High School Teacher of the Year, Mr. Rob Harris. And Principal Jason Alleman, if you would please step up as well. And please say a few words about our Teacher of the Year and present the certificate.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us and recognizing our fabulous Teacher of the Year, Mr. Rob Harris. He is a teacher at Dana Hills High School who works in our STEPS program, and he cares for our the highest need students on our campus. Every day, we're lucky enough to have parents that allow us to work with their kids 6, 7, 8+ hours a day. And we know it takes a lot of trust for parents to release their students to us. In this case, we have some of the most disabled, highest need students on our campus. And Mr. Harris is being recognized this year as our District Teacher of the Year because he creates opportunities for those students to be fully included in classrooms, fully included in social experiences, and fully included in high school athletics. And over the course of the 5.5 years that I've been lucky enough to work with Mr. Harris, I've been pretty amazed at the work that he does, the patience that he has for our students, our staff, and our parents, and more importantly, how he touches our students' lives and really makes them live up to their capacity and potential. It's amazing to watch happen. The first year I was there, I thought, wow, that's just, maybe the guy's having a good year. But this guy has put back to back years together that have just been amazing and have inspired not only me as his principal, but just really a colleague, but also a number of other students and staff members alike. So it gives me a great honor and pride to present to you Rob Harris as our Teacher of the Year, not only at Dana Hills, but for Capistrano Unified School District. By the way, he is also a resident of the city of Dana Point. So.
Mr. Harris, we are extremely proud of you, extremely proud that you're part of our Dana Hills family and a Dana Hills resident, but the work you do is so inspiring, and I'm sure that that you have a huge impact on the kids that you teach and you interact with on a daily basis. So we just want to say we wanted to recognize you as well, and we want to present you with this certificate saying that the city of Dana Point recognizes you for being extraordinary and thanks you for being with our kids.
Thank you.
And then I understand afterwards, after you were given your award, what did you do?
I went to Disneyland.
Yay! I was going to jump in. Councilmember Vizorek, if you would please come up, and VFW Senior Vice Commander Wayne Yost, and Lieutenant Chilton, please come up here for your presentation. Oh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, everyone. As you can see, we're going to have a crowd of people up here tonight, but let me first introduce myself. I'm Councilman Rick Vicsorik, so I'm here on behalf of the city, but I'm also wearing two hats tonight because I am a member of VFW Post 9934, and I'm the chairman for our firefighter, EMT, and law enforcement awards, which are national awards. So I just wanted to really briefly state there's a reason the VFW recognizes these types of people, these types of individuals that serve us. I mean, we recognize that, you know, law enforcement and emergency services, the things they do are so important and they're exemplary. And they're of such great value to our nation that we, as a veterans organization, want to recognize the individuals that provide us these types of services. So before I turn it over to our Vice Commander, Wayne Yost, to make the presentation, let me just say a few things about each individual. So I'm going to ask them to please come up one at a time. The first one I'll ask to come up is Reserve Officer Smigel. If you would join me up here. Is your battalion chief here by any chance? Where is he? Please come on up and join us. How are you? Sanchez, how are you? So again, we have a lot of people up here tonight. I'll just try to keep it brief. I wanted to say a few things about Reserve Officer Smigel and why he was chosen for this award. Reservists kind of have a soft spot in my heart, you know, as a military reservist, but one of the key things about them is they have full-time jobs during the day. So the work they do for the fire department, it's a secondary job. And, you know, Officer Smigel is an employee of Kawasaki Motors Corporation for 15 years, is that correct? So, and he currently holds the position of manager of supply chain operations. So in addition to that, he does so much as part of the Orange County Fire Authority. But there's one other thing I wanted to point out. For the last 18 months, he's also volunteered his time as a volunteer firefighter for San Diego County Fire, is that true? And again, just in an effort to show what kind of person he is and the volunteer time and how much he gives back to his community, that is truly going above and beyond. So with that, let me turn it over to our Vice Commander, Wayne Yost, to make the presentation from the VFW.
Do I address you as firefighter, Smile? Reserve firefighter. So on behalf of the Veterans of Foreign Wars, our founding member, former commander, former district commander, and current quartermaster of Veterans of Foreign Wars, Bill Manus, will make the presentation for our selection as the Firefighter of the Year.
This, for Reserve Officer Jason Smigel, Orange County Fire Authority, Fire Station 7, San Juan Capistrano. Special recognition of the exemplary service to humanity, administering emergency medical assistance. That's the certificate, and there's a little envelope that goes along with that award.
Congratulations.
That presentation was on behalf of VFW Post 9934. And just really quickly, the way our organization is structured, that is our local post. We then have a district which encompasses posts in the area, and then we have the Department of California, and then we have a national organization as well. There's a reason I tell you that, because we were honoring him for choosing him as our selection as the post honoree. But there's some more information that goes along with that, and I think I'll turn it over to Bill Manus to announce that.
There's two more awards going here. Actually, there's three programs for paramedic, firefighter, and law enforcement. They're on the calendar, they occur at the same time, but they are three separate programs, separate criteria, separate judging. That is what makes it happen in 2017 for Dana Point Post 9934 very unusual, in that we sent our three awards, three nominees, to District 2, which includes posts in Orange County and part of San Bernardino County, some 18 posts. Our 3 nominees all won first place at the district level. Very, very unusual. Very happy for us. Those nominees went up to the state of California, Sacramento, to the Department of California, VFW. Again, very surprisingly, very happy. One of the awardees, our law enforcement nominee, won first place for the state. Our other 2 nominees won second place for the state. There will be additional presentation at the local level for all 3 of you sometime in the future. It has to come down through the chain of command. We haven't had the time and place yet, but there will be additional presentations for all 3 of the Dana Point nominees for these award programs.
Thank you, Bill. So as he said, he was victorious at the district level. He went to the state level and came in second place there. Very impressive. So congratulations on that. There's one more award that we want to present, and now I'll put on my city council member's hat. We want to award you a certificate of recognition on behalf of the city. So I'll read it. Reserve Officer Jason Smigel from the Veterans of Foreign Wars, Post 9934, the 2016 Reserve Firefighter of the Year, or EMT, presented by the City Council, the City of Dana Point, in recognition of your being named the Veterans of Foreign Wars 2016 Reserve Firefighter of the Year. Congratulations. Point, I would be remiss if, do you have anything that you'd like to say, Chief? Or? I'll say something when you're done. Okay, well, you want to wait for the other presentation as well? Okay, well then I'll ask if you have anything to say.
No, I just I want to say thank you to all present, City of Dana Point, the VFW. It's truly an honor to receive this and also be in the presence of so many great people.
Great, thank you very much. We'll get a photo, everybody on. Where do you want to stand? Right there?
Mark, maybe you can hold that one there. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Now, our next award winner tonight is Captain Justin Neville. Justin, will you please join us up here? So again, I'll just give some brief comments about who Justin is and why we selected him. Justin's been in firefighting for a long time. He's been with the OCFA since 2005, so that's 12 years if my calculations are correct. But that's not where his service began. You started as a volunteer firefighter in 1993, is that correct? I don't want to do the math on that, but that's a long time. So, I mean, here's an individual that has dedicated his life to being a firefighter. And the same as with Officer Smigel, that's not all he does. I mean, this may be a minor thing to some people, but I know now that I'm coaching my son's Little League team. He's also a Little League coach, San Clemente, and an AYSO coach. Again, that is a volunteer position. That takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to make kids' lives better, and that's one of the reasons why we've selected him here today. So with that, I will turn it over. Are you going to make the presentation or Bill? Okay, I'll turn it over to Bill for the presentation.
Okay. Fire Captain Paramedic Justin Neville, Orange County Fire Authority, Fire Station 30, Dana Point, in special recognition and highest praise for alertness, personal courage, and ever-efficient guardianship of life and property. So, from Post 9934, congratulations.
Okay, thanks, Bill. And let's not forget, as Bill mentioned, Justin not only was our selection, he was selected as the district winner. It went up to the state level, and he was the second place choice of the state level. So again, a great showing by our people that serve us. So congratulations. That's great. I now have an award for
for you from the city. Certificate of recognition for Captain Justin Neville, VFW Post 9934, the 2016 Firefighter of the Year. Presented by the City Council of the City of Dana Point, recognition you're being named the Veterans of Foreign Wars 2016 Firefighter of the Year. Congratulations. Before I give you a chance to talk, now would you like to say something? Okay. Here we go.
Oh, first of all, I want to say thank you to the VFW, thank you to the city staff and city council members for recognizing our firefighters here in the city of Dana Point and throughout the area. These gentlemen dedicate a lot of time that's not just devoted to being paid for. They show a lot of effort on their days off, as well as you heard about Jason and Justin. They have a lot of commitments, not just to the fire service, but to their communities and to their families. So I'd also like to thank the families for supporting them, because without them, they couldn't do what they do every single day, whether they're on duty or off duty. So thank you to all of you. Thank you for attending, too.
Would you like to say anything?
First off, I just want to thank the veterans. I don't think you guys can get thanked enough for the service that you guys have and the sacrifices that you've made. This wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for the people that I go to work with every day and my crew. So they should be up here too as well, because they make my job very easy. Thanks to my family for being supportive all those nights I'm gone, and thanks to all my friends for being here as well.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, now asking Lieutenant Chilton to come up and join us, because we're going to turn to our law enforcement officer awardee. So I'd like to ask Deputy Scott, please come up. This is Deputy Zacharias Scott. He is our award winner for 2016. Again, just a few quick words. Turn the page. Thanks. I have a few more notes on him. You might notice it's quite a long thing, but I'll keep this brief. Not only is Deputy Scott our award winner because of what he does as a deputy, but he's the same as everyone in these professions. They volunteer their time, not only to their job, but they volunteer it out in the community. And so, and correct me if I'm wrong, but according to your resume, you were a graduate of St. Mary's in 2004. You didn't immediately go into law enforcement, did you? No. Okay. So this is someone that came in a little bit later in life, but has really excelled. And you know, really what I want to say to try to keep this brief is highlight some of the volunteer work he does. I have here, you're a member of the Knights of Columbus, which is a organization of Catholic gentlemen that really do a lot of great work in the community. And he also, I'm hoping you'll talk a little bit about this, is a volunteer puppy raiser for the Canine Companions for Independence. So I'm going to be interested in hearing a little bit about that. But having said that, like I said, I want to keep it brief. But and Bill sort of stole my thunder here, but I want to reemphasize something that Bill said as we've been talking about the tiers that they go through. Not only was Deputy Scott selected as our winner, he went up to the district level. He was selected as the district winner there, and that's the first time that all of our nominees have been selected at the district level, which is quite an accomplishment and says something about them. Right, any post. I mean, it's unbelievable. It talks about these gentlemen that we have here serving us. But to reiterate the point that Bill talked about is When he went to the state level, which we call the department, he was selected as the state winner as well. So we're looking at the state of California VFW Deputy of the Year. It now goes to the national level. I don't know if you have any more information on where that stands, Bill, and if you do, I'd love to hear it, but I've made some inquiries, but I don't believe we have word back, but he's in the running for the National Deputy of the Year. So with that, let me turn it over to Bill to make the presentation.
Okay. There's some 55, I believe, departments in Veterans of Foreign Wars nationally. It includes the states and overseas and so forth. So you're one of 55, still in contention, Deputy. So from VFW Post 9934, in grateful recognition of unyielding adherence to the highest ideals of law enforcement in maintaining, preserving, and protecting the lawful rights of all citizens. And the envelope also. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
And one more time, putting on the city councilman's hat, we do have a certificate from the city. Certificate of Recognition for Deputy Zachariah Scott, Veterans of Foreign Wars, Post 9934, 2016 Law Enforcement Officer of the Year, presented by the City Council of the City of Dana Point in recognition of your being named the Veterans of Foreign Wars 2016 Law Enforcement Officer of the Year. Congratulations. With that, would you like to say anything, Lieutenant Chilton?
I'll keep it brief because I want to hear about the puppies. I didn't even know about that. We're very fortunate to have Zach working for the community here in Dana Point. Law enforcement has become an ever more challenging profession, and Zach upholds the principles and the standards that is expected by our residents. Has done an outstanding job. He's done an outstanding job for me as chief and as a resident of this town. I just am very, very impressed. He truly serves our community well. And for Mrs. Scott, I know there's a lot of great things coming in this man's future. You might want to carve out a piece of the wall because there's going to be more plaques and honors coming his way throughout his career. And Zach, thank you very much. And VFW, thank you for this recognition.
I just wanted to say thanks to the city. I honestly love the city. I got real lucky coming here. To be honest, it wasn't my first choice, but it was definitely a blessing in disguise. My first choice was a little more closer to home in Huntington Beach, so that was the only reason. But I got very, very lucky here, so thank you to the city, thank you to my chief, thank you to the VFW and everybody behind me. One thing I definitely wanted to add, and the captain added it too, was your family is just as important to you to get all this done. So one thing I wish I had added to my resume, if you want to call it that, was my wife and I play a big part in the cystic fibrosis world. And my wife, and I'm not going to take kudos for this, I'll give it to her, we raised $75,000 in 2016 for the foundation. And if you want to ask, my connection to CF is a little guy standing there. So again, it's not kudos to me, it's kudos to her and to him. Past hour, you've gone hungry, so.
Can I give you a pen? What do you say? There you go. That's from Dana Point or your dad likes that.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
So just briefly, and I've addressed the City Council before on this, in our little 7 square miles of paradise, we are blessed to have a safe community that's serviced well by our first responders, and we all can sleep comfortably knowing, irregardless of what our needs might be, that these people will serve us in a prompt, professional, and efficient way, and we all owe an undying amount of gratitude for all of these first responders, not only the recipients of the awards tonight, but also of those that serve with them. So please show your appreciation for our wonderful first responders.
Thank you.
This is like school.
And you say up there?
Well, that was a nice presentation, very touching. Okay, so next we're on to the consent calendar. So all matters listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine, and all will be enacted by one roll call vote. There will be no separate discussions of these items unless members of the City Council, the public, or the staff request that a specific item or items be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Are there any items to be removed by the staff?
No, Madam Mayor.
Any items to be removed by the public?
No, Madam Mayor.
Council, any items to be removed? Then I call for a vote on the consent calendar.
I'll move the calendar.
And we'll...
Second.
So the consent calendar passes unanimously, 5-0. Madam Clerk, are there any titles of ordinances that are to be read?
Madam Mayor, we have no ordinance titles this evening. Thank you.
Then I open up this portion of the meeting for public comments. There is a 3-minute time limit, which we ask everybody to observe so that I don't have to interrupt you, and an overall time limit of 15 minutes for this public comment portion of the agenda. The balance of the public comments will be heard after new business if for some reason we run out of time and have to move on. All comments are to be directed to the City Council, and please not any personal attacks. Members of the public are expected to maintain professional, courteous decorum during their comments. State law prohibits the City Council from taking action on any specific item unless it appears on the agenda, so please don't be offended if we don't talk to you or discuss your item and merely thank you for your comment. Any handouts? Okay. And when you get up and talk, please state your name and your residence for our record. I first have Dawn Uberneck and then Dan Daly. Welcome, Ms. Uberneck.
Thank you. My name is Dawn Urbanek, and I am a resident of, that's okay, resident of San Clemente, and I've been a longtime taxpayer and student advocate in the Capistrano Unified School District. I came tonight to meet you guys and to also present you with CUSD Watch. City leaders learned about Measure M from the public and not in ad hoc meetings with your CUSD. If the city mayors and elected leaders did not join together to oppose Measure M, we would be facing a $1.8 billion bond from the Capistrano Unified School District. Of the 206 school measures on the ballot last November, 187 passed, representing nearly $50 billion in future property taxes for the state of California. 162 of those were Prop 39 school facilities bonds. CUSD Watch was founded as a subscription service so that the cities, the counties, and our elected leaders could be informed about CUSD without taking your staff time and financial resources to cover all the meetings. The amount of new tax revenues generated for schools through our public education system has grown substantially, while per pupil funding at the local level has remained flat. By 2021, our local control funding formula limits per pupil funding to 2007-8 levels, not to be reached until 2021. In 2007, the California state budget was $103 billion. Today, it's over $125 billion. The amount of tax revenue generated for schools, I already said that, sorry about that. The state of California uses our public education system to raise revenues, but rather than increasing per pupil funding, the state uses surplus revenues to create new programs and entitlements that are not constitutionally mandated, such as high-speed rail. The perpetual underfunding of schools has pitted what is in the educational interest of students against what is in the economic interest of employees. Staff runs CUSD, and trustees are partially informed about many issues by design. The most blatant example I can give you is Agenda Item 10 on tomorrow night's board meeting agenda. It is the agreement where Capo is going to purchase the Ascensia school site from the Rancho Mission Viejo. Anyway, to make a long story short, I did provide all of this to you in writing, and I did get a call from Mr. Burris, who's the communications person for Capo Unified, and they are not going to vote on this tomorrow. They will put it off till March 15th in a special board workshop. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Mr. Daly.
Good evening. My name is Dan Daly. I'm a resident here in Dana Point, and I also work for Alzheimer's Orange County. We are an independent, nonprofit organization, and we've been providing free programs and services to thousands of residents throughout Orange County who are coping with Alzheimer's and dementia. Last year, we assumed operations of South Coast Adult Day Services, and we've moved into a beautiful new building in Laguna Woods. Additionally, we have delivered dementia care programs to over 25,000 residents in the county. Our 24/7 helpline has received over 7,000 calls. We also have provided support to 4,000 family caregivers through the 40 local support groups that we have. In 2017, we're going to expand these services, and we're going to provide memory screening and also drop-in respite services. Today, there is over 84,000 afflicted with Alzheimer's or some dementia-related disorder. That number will triple by 2025. If you know someone who is affected by memory loss, please call our helpline, which is 1-844-HELP-ALZ, or visit our website, www.alzoc.org. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to make this announcement. Continued success to you in the city of Dana Point, because I love living here. Thanks again. I also have some folders that I'll leave with the desk here, unless you have any questions.
No questions. I just want to thank you for your work. It's very important work. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
We have another public comment, Mr. Stephen Wontrowski. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor and fellow council member Stephen Wontrowski, Mission Viejo. And I'd just like to address some of the items on a letter I sent to the city back on February 10th. And in summary, what it states is that for the last 2 years, more than 2 years, I've maintained that the OCFA is in danger of bankruptcy or collapse. And people ask, how can that be? How can that be? Everything looks great. And the reason is because about 2.5 years ago, Chief Richter, former fire chief, stated in public meeting that if the city of Irvine leaves the OCFA, we got a potential collapse on our hands, okay? In January, the city of Irvine council voted to look into leaving the OCFA, all right? Now, the thing about that's a pretty dramatic move. Irvine is recognized as the most fiscally responsible city with a resident total of over 200,000 in the entire United States. So when Irvine does something like that, I think it behooves not only Mission Viejo, but other surrounding Orange County cities here to find out what's going on, what's really going on here. And there are two big problems. One, the OCFA is high cost. There's no two ways about that. Average firefighter gets $235,000 in yearly compensation. The same paramedic with a private company, $75,000. Okay, you go to then you can even look at Cal Fire. Cal Fire is so much cheaper. And Cal Fire used to supply the services before the OCFA, but the board of directors of the OCFA over the years have just let these costs skyrocket, okay? Nobody being held accountable. The big deal is that OSERS has said that if the OCFA collapses, all the cities are going to be looked at to pay that unfunded liability at OSERS. So I've got just two quick questions for the city attorney here. Does the OSERS opinion have legal merit? All right? And they're represented by one of the best attorneys, bankruptcy pension attorneys in the United States, all right? The second question, what should a city do to minimize its liability? And then I have a couple of things that you might want to do. Band together, just like for the police call services, band together. Have a joint meeting with 7 or 8 South Orange County cities on the OCFA. What can we do? Could you possibly leave the OCFA, get CAL FIRE to do fire suppression, and private paramedic ambulance company, like CARE, they just put their paramedics on board. Save millions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Wontrowski brings up a really good point, and this has been debated back and forth. And what he's talking about is the unfunded pension liabilities currently OCFA carries. The issue with Irvine leaving is being studied right now, and I'm with you 100% on this. We need to figure out what the true cost is. The JPA states that those unfunded liabilities stay with the JPA. They do not transfer to the cities. That's what it states. That doesn't mean it's not going to be challenged, because there is an issue there that I've been trying to get an answer to internally with the fire authority on what really is going to happen. You know it's coming. It's going to be a lawsuit, because if they leave, I don't know that I agree that the fire authority collapses, but it'll definitely change the type of services that we provide. So.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. And again, just to reiterate, while this is something that needs to be discussed, it cannot be discussed at this meeting because it has not been agendized. But thank you for bringing this to our attention. And thank you for your comments. Are there any other public comments?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, then I'm closing the public comment portion of the meeting. Are there any public hearings?
No, Madam Mayor.
So now moving on to unfinished business, staff report.
Agenda item 9 is our monthly Doheny Village Plan update, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our Director of Community Development, Ursula Luna Reynosa.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. In response to some questions at the January 17th City Council meeting, which was the last Doheny Village update, staff has been analyzing some traffic data to determine the proposed roundabouts and road diet that were discussed at that meeting, that if they can be achieved as contemplated, and a memorandum on that subject will be attached to next month's Doheny Village status update meeting. So I just wanted to inform you that that is being analyzed and looked at and will be coming to you soon. Also, at the last City Council meeting, the City Council directed staff to conduct a citywide parking policy discussion and to schedule a joint study session with the Planning Commission and the City Council. And there is some information in your staff report about staff's recommendation for that to occur in April and the reasons therefore, mainly having to do with the seating of the new Planning Commission, because we have 2 seats that are available, and it seems prudent to allow the new commission to be part of that joint study session, but it's ultimately up to the City Council and how you would like to proceed on that. Staff does anticipate that there will be a need for some resources to move that forward and is putting a work program together and anticipates bringing that to you next month with the update as well for what the cost of the parking study session and related efforts would be. And there's also on the books scheduled meeting with the City Council members and Opticos Design, as well as Nelson Nygaard, to give our 2 newer council members an opportunity to get briefed on sort of the history, where they've been, as well as to allow the remaining council members to have an opportunity to ask questions or give any comments. And the staff has estimated that that can cost anywhere between $6,000 to $8,000, and largely depending on airfare, as it hasn't been booked until we're waiting for direction from the council. With that, I'm available for any questions. There's a little bit of information about some of the code enforcement, capital improvements in the area outlined in your staff report as well, but I think those are the critical summary items for this month. Thank you.
Thank you. I've also asked that that there be some sort of outreach or forum or something to explain the proposed form-based codes that are being proposed here at Doheny Village. I don't think that many people understand the implications of that, and has there been any progress, or are we planning to do something?
I think we can certainly, I think it might be good if the council does direct staff to move forward with these meetings with Opticos to talk about that. That would be increased scope for them to do that. If you wanted somebody else to give those forums, we would need to solicit proposals to do that. And so we certainly can do that and schedule such forums.
Is any member of the staff versed enough in form-based codes to answer people's questions and have just a community outreach without hiring somebody or paying Opticos?
Well, I mean, I think that there are staff members that can answer some general questions, but it is a specialty area, and so depending on how complex those questions get, it would be surface level answers that staff would be able to provide. So I think we could try that way at first and see how the questions go.
Okay, because, well, first it seems to me that if these ultimately become our codes and we have to enforce these codes, that we better understand these codes. And so I would hope that a member of the staff is familiar with these codes, certainly enough to answer questions of the residents at this point, and if it turns out later that we need to go more in depth, we can do that, but I think we need that first level of explaining to people what these proposed codes mean and how they differ radically from what we're used to with, use codes in our zoning.
If I could go ahead and jump in, I don't think it would be a stretch for us to put together a summary level document that could be distributed out that explains, the current way the city's always done the codes and how they work versus the form-based code approach. I think even if you look at some of the draft documents that have presented as you read through them, they do explain how a form-based code works. So I understand what you're saying. It might be a handout, if you will, that we could provide as opposed to necessarily having a huge forum, which we're going to have forums with the city council, planning commission as we move forward also. But I think sounds like you're asking for something that's a little wider distribution that might fit into maybe a newspaper article or a mail home, or maybe an article in our community news quarterly magazine that goes out to all households.
Okay.
If that's
Well,
what you're looking for.
I know Mr. Wyatt has already put an article in the DP Times last week. If anybody had a chance to read it, already starting to talk about the proposed form-based codes. So in that joint planning and city council meeting, you anticipate that there will be an opportunity to explain the proposed codes and answer residents' questions?
I think it would be appropriate, particularly given that we're going to have some new planning commissioners, I think, is the target time to do a quick briefing, if you will, on what the form-based code is. But again, going back to your comments about something we can distribute on a mass basis, we can't invite everybody to that commission meeting, and then obviously won't show up, but we can certainly try and get something in the Dana Point Times that goes to everybody's house, or in our quarterly guide that goes out to all the homes.
Okay, and then residents that do show up at that joint session, they will have an opportunity to ask questions, and we can answer those.
Yes.
Okay.
I do want to say that we are going to be well-versed in our form-based code, the form-based code that's being proposed for the city of Dana Point, so staff would be able to answer questions that way. If there's a theoretical discussion about form-based codes, and like any topic, you can debate it. So that's where, if there's going to be that sort of level of conversation, that's where I think a professional who deals with form-based codes, that was what I was proposing. But if it's about our code that's being prepared for the city of Dana Point, absolutely staff is able to answer those questions.
Okay, yeah, that's more of what I was anticipating, residents saying, explaining it, what it is in general, but then this is how it will apply to Dana Point, these are the codes that are being proposed, and then answering questions that people might have about how that impacts the city, how it's different from what we have now, that kind of thing. Thank you. Any other questions?
I have one comment. I understand what you're asking for. How many charrette sessions have we had?
Well, we had one charrette, but
one charrette, but we've had,
which was a 4-day lengthy process, and then we've had, I think, 3 community meetings that were larger, the entire public invited to, and then some smaller.
And they specifically
group meetings.
discussed our form-based code, correct?
Correct.
That's what we did. I mean, we've had these meetings already. I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't have more, but the outreach has been there. It's been out there, and some people have attended, some haven't. I'm not saying we shouldn't do more as we're getting closer, but we have to keep in mind, we've done 7 days of these, and they're 2-3-hour sessions. Well, the 4-day sessions were 8-hour days, and we did 3 more that were about 2 to 3 hour sessions. So we've done the outreach already, and whether people decide to come or not, we can't force them to show up to these events. But I'd like the idea of the handout, getting it on the web page to kind of describe exactly what a form-based code is, why we're choosing that instead of our standard zoning codes that we use today. And I like that idea, but keep in mind, we've done a lot of this already, and I don't know what the answer is why people aren't attending these, or people are asking you, we need more, why they didn't attend the ones we had. But I think it's a good idea, but just keep in mind, we have done this. This isn't new. It was well advertised. I see Ms. Nelson out there. She attended all of them. She was very well, not all of them, but I saw you like 3 or 4 of them at least. I'm sorry, I didn't invite you directly. You knew about them, you attended. So anyway, it's out there. We've done it, and I just want to make that comment. My other question was the road diet. I wanted to get to that. So are we engaged with Caltrans right now?
Well, I'll let engineering talk specifically about that, and Mark Denny.
No, the council had a number of questions at the last meeting, so we are preparing a memo to respond to all those questions before we move forward.
Okay, Caltrans isn't the only agency we need to...
Correct.
Who else do we have to talk to?
OCTA.
Do we also need to talk to San Juan? We're going to need to get approval from San Juan Cap?
That will be a part of the OCTA
piece of it?
MPAH process, correct.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. Thanks.
Thank you. And just speaking to your comment about outreach, I know I've attended several of those, and when I attended, it was basically an overview of the plan. Nothing went into the specifics that I heard of form-based codes, how they differ, and how it's going to be applied over the life of the building that I heard. And I know when I go out there and talk to people, no one is really understanding them. So that's why I'm still concerned that we're, whatever efforts we've made so far, I just want to make sure we make enough effort that when I start talking to people, I get a sense that people understand what we're doing.
No, I understand, but I think that's what Ms. Luna Reynosa was getting at, is that is not a discussion about our particular form-based codes. You're talking about what is a form-based code, how is it different, why are we doing that? I understand, we haven't had that meeting, that's for sure. But I was just trying to get it out there. We have had many meetings about this. Those meetings were available to have discussions about that. We had, 2 sessions where we specifically sat down and used our form-based code to build projects. They were open to the public. And
There was a presentation that Opticos gave during the design charrette. So those that participated, there were open sessions where people could just come in and come out, and then there were lunchtime presentations that were given. I have a copy of that presentation. It's like 70 slides, and it's very technical, and it's what is a form-based code and how does it differ from a traditional code. And that, I'm not sure if that particular presentation was videotaped or not. I'll have to check. We videotaped much of the charrette and put it on our website. If it is, I will find it and make that link even more readily available because people can look at that. But I happened to be giving a presentation this morning and was going through, and I saw this, like I said, like 75 slide presentation, very detailed, very in-depth. So certainly that information is there, and we can maybe do some more. But to get to that level of that detailed presentation, I don't think we have any staff person that is that competent in it. But at a high level, in terms of saying why we wanted to go with a form-based code, how it differs, like I said, at a very surface level, certainly staff can do that. But depending on how detailed council and the public wants to get, we may need some assistance.
Okay. Mr. Wyatt?
2 things. First of all, I want to be clear, I think, from all of us that the staff has gone out of their way to try to communicate what they're proposing. So I don't want to be critical of the staff, as Councilmember Miller said, not going out, meeting, holding charrettes, holding things. So they've been getting understanding through versus holding meetings. So sometimes a complicated thing is different. We're moving further along. So what they are is one thing. How they would impact the neighborhoods that would develop, or what my word is. What would the neighborhood look like if I bought a place and lived there? What would I expect to have happen? What would it look like? How would it change over time, et cetera? I think we still have some opportunity to communicate further, to gain understanding, and make people either feel like it's a great proposal or it's not great, and figure it out. So I don't want to make us feel like we think they haven't done. I think they've gone. I think they've worked hard to communicate, whether it's been successful in all areas or not. Still, I think we still have a little bit more to do. But the one thing I would like to ask, I think that waiting until after new planning commission members are seated is a delay that I don't see as being necessary. And my concern is not just the delay till April, when we may have some new people on the planning commission, but then they have to get up to speed a little bit. So there's a lot of background work to be done. So it could be June before you feel like they might be comfortable to actually weigh in on some of the decisions.
If I could, I was talking about in that regard, as far as putting together a summary presentation for the public, when it comes to the brochure and some more communications, either via our website and or possibly another newspaper article, I would say we need to move forward on those. But as far as a community presentation where we can have some of these questions asked, that's where I was going with the wait for the new.
Yeah, sorry, I think I probably didn't communicate that correctly. The joint session with the Planning Commission and the City Council, the proposal in our summary was to delay it until after new members were seated on the Planning Commission, so sometime in April. I would personally prefer not to do that delay. I think that they have, like I said, we have to get new members, and then they have to come up to speed, and then we have to, hold a session. So I don't know what the other council members think on that. I haven't asked, but
Our thought process along those lines was that we allow them the first planning commission meeting to sit down and figure out where their seats are and how the meeting runs, and then the second meeting we would be looking to hit them with the Doheny Village plan.
Any other comments? Okay, so the recommended action is that the city council receive and file the report. Any motion?
Kathy's got something.
Oh, sorry. We have a comment on this item 9. Thank you. Ms. Nelson? Sorry, not a slight.
Good evening, Tony Nelson, Capistrano Beach. I just wanted to weigh in a little bit about the Doheny Village plan. I think the community understands the plan conceptually. I think we love the idea of what Opticos came up with along with the city staff. We enjoyed the charrette. I think there's a general understanding of what's going on in Doheny Village, and I think there's a buy-in within the community in terms of what we're putting where. But there's a big gap in information in terms of this form-based coding. And speaking for myself, I attended a lot of this, and I didn't until recently understand that when you have form-based coding, there's no overlay to say that residential stays residential or that commercial stays commercial. And I don't think the community gets that. And I have a feeling, if I get that correctly, I think there's going to be a lot of concern that if I buy a home in Doheny Village, I want to make sure there are other residential uses next door and not necessarily something else that fits the form but maybe doesn't fit the purpose of my neighborhood. So I'd like to explore that. I think there's a lot of confusion out there. Maybe I'm confused on it. But the community has to weigh in on this and understand it. Also, I wanted to mention on Mr. Wyatt's comment about the delay. We don't want any more delays. We really need to get rolling on Doheny Village. It's just so far overdue, and we're getting uses in there now that we are not comfortable with as a community. And we'd like to get this plan over to the Coastal Commission as soon as possible. So anything you can do to expedite things, we appreciate. But I do agree that we should have one more community meeting where we could really get to the bottom of what does this really mean in terms of form-based coding and exactly what are we buying into here. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public
If I could actually have Ursula chime in, because I think I have a little bit of different understanding what Tony was just talking about as far as what's allowed now versus later.
Right. So, it sounds like there probably is a need for some more clarification because I think that there are some misconceptions. A form-based code, it's a common misconception that it doesn't regulate land use, and that's not true. It does regulate land use. There are allowed uses, prohibited uses, conditionally allowed uses, and if you look at the form-based code that's been drafted and prepared for Doheny Village, it absolutely has those matrices within the code within the various zones, which is just like conventional zoning. Conventional zoning often puts land use as the very highest issue in the code. It's the primary driver of the code. So it's very good at telling you what you can't do, but it's not very good at giving you a predictable environment of what you can do. It's not very good at allowing you to see what is my neighborhood going to look like, feel like, massing scale, et cetera, in 30, 50 years. And in fact, one of the exercises that Opticos will do on a contract that is kind of more expensive than the one that we asked for, is they will go through your conventional zoning code and they will find all these scenarios that are allowed under that code that were never anticipated. And so there's a lot of bad consequences that often can happen there. So with the form-based code, it's recognizing that a building's probably going to last at least 100 years, and within that 100 years, that uses will change frequently within that building. But take a commercial building, and it will maybe have be an office building for 20 years and then convert over maybe to a restaurant or something like that. But we absolutely, in any of the residential zones, can prohibit any commercial activity from ever happening in the future. So it does regulate land use, and it can protect residential neighborhoods from commercial activity, et cetera. So I just did want to clarify that, and we absolutely can have some forums to talk about that and make sure people understand that.
Yeah, thank you. I think there is confusion out there. I know I'm still confused about it, so that would be my suggestion. Anybody, did you have something to say? Mr. Miller?
So are we talking about having Opticos come in and have that discussion, or try to have staff have that discussion? Because that seems like a much higher level, more in-depth technical discussion about what form-based code is versus traditional zoning.
Well, I'm getting the impression that our staff does understand and can answer some of the questions like Ms. Nelson has at this point. And then if there are other questions, we can always bring in people later, but my suggestion would be to start with our staff and,
I just wanted to clarify that because there were two different conversations going on about our particular code, and staff could handle that, but when you start talking about history, theory of form-based code, what it does, that's a different conversation. We want to make sure we have the right people there for that conversation. But I understand what you're saying, so let's start with staff.
Okay. Any other comments? Any other staff report or comments from the public?
No more public comments.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
I'm closing the public comments on agenda item 9 and stating again that the recommended action is that the City Council receive and file the report. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Vote?
Madam Mayor, I'll second it.
Motion carries 5-0. On to the next item, item 10, consideration of the conceptual design for the medians on Crown Valley between Seven Seas Drive and Camino del Avion. Do we have staff report?
Yes, we do. We are seeking approval of the conceptual design and direction to proceed with preparing construction documents. I'm going to go ahead and have Deputy City Manager Mark Denny give a staff report.
Great. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. As a part of the fiscal year 15-17 budget capital improvement program, City Council approved the Crown Valley Median Replacement Project and an associated funding for design. This design for this project was programmed in the CIP to come before the planned pavement resurfacing project, which will occur in fiscal 17-18 in the same general location. On July 13th of 2016, the City Council approved a contract with Integration Design Studio for the design of the project, and on January 18th of 2017, Public Works staff and Glenn Brower from Integration Design presented the landscape design concept plan to the City Traffic Improvement Subcommittee, which unanimously recommended approval of the design concept. The media improvements will include the following elements: increase in median curb height, create maintenance access paths throughout the median, eliminate irrigation overspray with new drip irrigation, drought-tolerant plantings, and improved appearance and consistency with the PCH medians. Should the council approve the concept plans, they will be integrated into the plans and specifications for the Crown Valley Roadway Resurfacing Program, which, pending a successful bid process and subsequent council approval, will be under construction next fiscal year. And we're available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any council member have questions of staff? Are there any public comments on this agenda item? Thank you. Mr. Miller, did you have some? First, Mr. Buck Hill, and then Ms. Tony Nelson.
Good evening, Buck Hill from Capistrano Beach, 19 years here. I just ask that the council consider, are there any alternatives that should be before them? So this is one major choice, $1.1 million, almost $1.2 million budget here. My last remembrance of this was it was about $500,000, and it was occasioned by the problems of the severe drought and so forth. And also was assuming there was going to be recycled water, which I've heard is not anymore in the plan. So For example, is there some very inexpensive alternative to put in a drip system, let the grass die, and plant little succulents or ground cover? The trees are quite pretty. You'll hear other people talk about the aesthetics. That's not my thing. But it seems like to me there ought to be a series of choices, and then the council can say, this is the best choice for Dana Point. This is a huge number, $1.2 million, and the current budget projects a deficit this year. Is this the right thing to do? That's my question. And it may well be. I'm not against it. I'm just asking, could we think about it? Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nelson?
Good evening, Tony Nelson, Capistrano Beach. I wasn't planning to talk on this item, but just sitting in the audience, I looked through the staff report and saw the photos. And I was struck by the fact that the medians show a lot of some eucalyptus trees, and I understand that even though they're beautiful and stately, they've now become overgrown, and you probably have to remove them because of roots and that kind of issue. But there's also a lot of other trees on that median. I think maybe crepe myrtles. I'm not really sure. Mark could probably tell me what they are. But they look fine, and it sounds like we're tearing all of that out. And my question is, first, in terms of funding, you know, almost $1.2 million on some medians that, from where I live, look pretty darn good so far right now. So I'm kind of wondering whether the council might want to reconsider the amount of money that we're spending on this. My other issue is more just as a gardener myself, is there's reference in the report to having the landscape match the rest of town center. And my question is sort of conceptual. Does the city council, do the people of Dana Point want Dana Point to be a city that matches in terms of its landscaping? Or should we be considering sort of a more interesting, eclectic sort of palette, depending on what area you're in? You know, PCH runs, or Crown Valley runs into PCH, but it's really sort of its own distinct path. And it's quite lovely when you drive through there and you see these stately eucalyptus, which are really part of California, part of our history, and they're beautiful. So I don't know, are we committed as a city to the palm tree look? Are we going to have that everywhere? I know when I speak to people about the Doheny Village plan, we don't want palm trees in Doheny Village. We want shade trees. We want a different look for that part of the community. We want the shade. We want the, you know, the ambiance of being able to sit under shade trees and have lunch or a cup of coffee. So I'm just wondering, if we're going to commit to this kind of money, do we want to maybe take a step back and think about it a little bit more? When I look at the detailed numbers, there are 32 trees that cost $1,450 each. There are 4 trees that cost $5,400 each. That is one heck of a tree. And then we have 13 at $4,500. These are really expensive specimens. There are beautiful, beautiful trees we can buy for a few $100s. We could even replant eucalyptus and put, you know, root guards around them and keep the roots from impeding, you know, future road work. There are a lot of choices. And so before we embark on such a big expenditure, I just wish we'd kind of hit pause, even just for a month, and see if there might be some other alternatives, or there might be some other, you know, design people who'd like to weigh in on it. So just another concept. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so I'm going to close the public comment portion of this, and I would ask staff if you could speak to what the 2 speakers have raised. First, the cost. Was it at one point $500,000 and now it's $1 million? And what is it exactly we're going to put back in there, and why it has to be done now?
I think we'll tag team on this, and
Okay.
what I want to start with was, you know, part of the impetus that moved this to the, you know, front of the line, if you will, was the drought and the state restrictions on, you know, we're not allowed to water with potable water, turf on medians. We did work with South Coast Water to see if they could run reclaim there. It's not in their near-term plans anywhere. So we moved forward with drought tolerant as a concept. As we were doing this and looking down the road at our capital projects, that section of Crown Valley is slated for some major rehab work over the next couple of years. Part of what we've been doing citywide with our road rehab projects is to improve the curb along any medians. If you look at the curb out there now on some of the pictures, you'll see that it's pretty shallow. So the cost of ripping out and putting in the curb at the appropriate height is obviously a higher cost, but it's a safety issue as well. The eucalyptus trees, as beautiful as they are, they're not indigenous to California, and they're horrible when it comes to any infrastructure that's near them. Their root systems tear up curbs, gutters, streets. So we're going to have to, I mean, we would have to root prune them, and if you look at the size of those trees, it's not a safety option. It's not a safe option. So some of that's driving the cost as well. And I don't know if, I'm sure I missed something that Mark's already wants to chime in here as well, if you guys.
Well, related to the second part of your question, staff had gone down the path of not an exact match of the PCH medians, which is generally in the area between Crown Valley and Blue Lantern, not necessarily the same as the medians on Del Prado, which include different species of trees. But certainly if the council so directed, we could go back to the drawing board. As was indicated, there are some species of trees here that are driving some expense. And certainly we could come up with a couple of different options and bring those back to your council for your consideration. Fortunately, we have time to do that, and that's why we brought it this early.
That was my next question. Is this something that has to be decided or done now? I heard the next couple years, so.
Again, the planned construction would be about this time next year, just as we're now about to go under construction with our pavement resurfacing project in Capistrano Beach next month. This would be next year at the same time. And so therefore, yes, we absolutely have time. Happy to work with Integrated Design and come up with some palette alternatives and show you what those costs look like and bring it back perhaps at the second meeting in March, if you like.
Okay. Mr. Wyatt?
So you and I, well, the three of us talked a bit about this today. So just to reiterate, there's a paving project coming that's a scheduled repaving. There's a need to, at least a high desire to raise the curbs, which we would normally do at repaving because it's a safety thing to do. Raising the curbs and the eucalyptus tree become even more an issue because they will become even less stable as you're digging out curbs and doing other things. So that would be the time to remove them. What I don't have is sort of, in looking at the budget now, is to sort of segment the total work project into, the curbs, the removal of the trees, plus then there's new landscaping to be added and new watering. We have to go drought tolerant, right? And that because we only have potable water, so we have to deal with that when we do it back in. So it would be worthwhile to, and a little bit as we looked at it, to break this request into, the cost that will take to pave, the curb work, the removal of the eucalyptus, and then the additional landscaping. So we could look at alternatives at each of those areas and try to, it would make it more, we would communicate more effectively where the money was going if we could break it into that. So could I request of staff that we do that?
Yeah, and if I may, Madam Mayor, supporting document D shows the very preliminary draft engineer's estimate, and roughly 250,000 rough numbers of the total $923,000 project costs are those landscaping plant-specific costs. The rest are the hardscape, the irrigation, and everything else. So absolutely, we could break it down differently so you could see that very clearly. And certainly if we were directed to propose some different options, slates of options, we could present that to you and comparing them each to the other.
Yes, thank you. And I see that it says the estimate does not include rehabilitation of existing landscape and hardscape improvements in the median between PCH and 7 Seas Drive. Is that correct?
Correct, because it includes demolition of all of it.
Okay. But what I'm still hearing is we have time. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Any other questions? Mr. Vazorek?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one question for you, Mr. Dent. I noticed in the staff report that 544 residents and property owners were notified that this was the design that we came up with. What was the response? Are they objecting to the design that came up, or can you give me a sense of
We
what
had
the
one
residents of that
resident.
area feel?
We had one resident attend the meeting to the traffic subcommittee, and she had indicated an appreciation for the eucalyptus, but after the presentation understood the need to remove them and was supportive of the project.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Any other staff comments or information? Okay. Do I have a motion on this? The recommended action is that the City Council approve the conceptual design and direct the staff to proceed with the preparation of construction documents for Crown Valley Median Drought Conversion Project. Do I have a motion? Mr. Wyatt?
So I'm trying to make sure I got your Robert's rules right here, but can I motion that we delay this and get a report back, a budget to us that actually breaks out subtotals for the paving work, the curb work, the tree removal, and then additional landscaping, so we can see that budget, and then we can act on that design after we get an easier to digest budget.
So there are basically two options. You can postpone to a time certain, or you can postpone indefinitely. We can postpone to a time.
I would like to keep it time certain.
Time certain,
Okay.
and then we can direct staff.
And I don't think it's a big, I think they have all the data here. It just needs to be reorganized. So maybe by the next council meeting, we could put that together, or two. What time certain could we live with, I guess?
We're polling the audience right now.
Yeah,
And for me,
Suggested about a month from now, second meeting in March.
Okay.
and for me, I'd like to actually see the landscape plan. I don't, is what's
in
that picture there? Is that what's going in? More palm trees?
That's the current plan, yeah.
More palm.
The landscape
But
plans
at least
were
it would break
included
down
in the
what they cost and
agenda.
various things.
And have we considered something besides palm trees? And as the residents were saying, can we bring back something that is an alternative to palm trees and a different, the cost of landscaping in some alternative method, which will not have the problems of the eucalyptus trees, but not just be more palm trees?
It's really the pleasure of the city council.
And if I could, we're talking about the $250,000 piece of this project, if I'm not mistaken. So we can bring back, some different palette options and with some costs at the second meeting in March to see what the delta might be as far as savings if you choose a different direction.
Okay, so that I'm stating your motion correctly, you are motioning that item 10 on the agenda, the consideration of conceptual design for the medians on Crown Valley between Seven Seas Drive and Camino del Avion, be postponed to a time certain, and that time certain being the second meeting in, council meeting in March, being March 21st, with a direction to staff to bring back the breakdown of the various components and an alternate to the palm tree landscaping. Is that correct?
Okay. Well, I didn't add the alternate. That was your motion. But,
Do you want to just put that all in one, or do you want me to do an amendment?
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, I do have one question.
Yes.
Before I proceed to motions. What was the answer to the question that was originally budgeted for $500 and some odd thousand, and how did we get to over $1 million? Was that, I don't think that was answered unless I wasn't listening. But
That initial project was it was specific to, and I believe anticipating that we would have access to a reclaimed water project that would be concurrent with it. And then also another change on this was looking down the road at the road work that needs to be done and adding in the changes to the curbs and some of the cobblestone that's going along with it for safety purposes.
If we were to wait, is there a possibility of using reclaim versus potable water?
We will be able to plug in, I believe, reclaimed if it does show up. I believe we're being allowed to install the purple pipe even if we're not using purple pipe, if
Correct.
I'm not mistaken.
Correct. There's an easy
So
conversion
if-
to it, and it
If
could
it shows
come-
up nearby, we can plug into it in the future. We wouldn't be precluded from doing it.
No, I didn't think we'd be precluded, but my question is, if we waited on this, would reclaimed water be available? Like a year from now, which is what we're talking about?
The indications we got, and it's been a little while, but from South Coast Water, that this was not a project that was high on their list of critical projects to do with their limited resources for reclaimed water expansion.
Could we ask Mr. Erkeneff if he has
Absolutely.
any insight into when we might get reclaimed water there?
I didn't think I'd be called up here, but I'm happy to do so.
That'll teach you to show up.
So again, the original budgeted item a year or so ago was about $450,000, anticipating the ability for recycled water to come in to effectively irrigate the turf, because under state law, there's no potable turf irrigation allowed for in medians, so staff's spot on for that. I was at that meeting, reported back to our South Coast Water District staff, and we looked into our infrastructure plans for recycled water, and there's nothing on the books currently to bring recycled water up over the hills, so to speak, there in Crown Valley. It's a challenge for us, to say the least, for recycled water. We have a bottleneck project that just finally got approved. We just got Caltrans approval. The South Laguna folks voted to do 2 shifts working all night. It upped our budget by over $1 million just to expand our recycled water line through South Laguna to bring more water into the city of Dana Point proper. We also have another bottleneck in Golden Lantern right out here that we're having to put money into. So the capacity of the system is just about maxed out right now where we're at. So I would say it potentially could be there, but it right now is not on our books to budget to put up the hill there. Because when you weigh how much it would cost to put in the necessary infrastructure, you really don't get a return on those dollars if you're just like irrigating drought-tolerant plants with it. So that's it in a nutshell. I could go on and on, but I'll leave it at that. So thank you. Any other questions?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Did that answer your question? Yes. So what I'm hearing then is the difference between what was the original estimate and this new $1 million plus estimate is potable water versus reclaimed.
The original program was just to convert the existing irrigation to reclaimed. When it was found that that wasn't going to be possible, the city council increased the budget to do a complete revitalization of the median and install the drip irrigation.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so the motion still on the table, it hasn't been seconded yet, is that Mr. Wyatt's motion that we will postpone to a time certain, being March 21st, 2017, the second council meeting of March, item 10, with the direction to staff that we get a breakdown of the various components, and with my addition to it, that we look at alternatives to landscaping besides the palm trees with an estimate of that. Is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Do I have a second? I'll second it. We should vote.
I do have one more question. Is it possible to put into what we're looking at for numbers, to put in the main portions of the reclaimed purple pipe? Is that something we're already considering, or is that?
Yes.
Okay, so that would
Because
be in
there will be either a connection at PCH that could be made in the future, or at the other end at Del Avion, about 1,000 feet from that, Molten Niguel has a line, and Molten Niguel may keep coming towards Del Avion at some point, and then that may be an opportunity to connect up at that end as well.
So
But
just-
right now, neither district has it in their 5-year capital plan.
And then, so in the future, will those main lines be in there so we won't have to dig up
Correct.
too much? Okay, great. Yes. That would be my concern. Thank you.
Mr. Miller?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, do I understand we're going to do the medians and then we're going to do the road work? Or we're going to do the curb and gutter and the medians at the same time?
All at the same time.
So it's all happening, so we're not going to put it in and then have to go back and tear stuff out?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second, so let's vote on the motion on the table. Motion to postpone to a time certain, item number 10 on the agenda with the directions to staff has passed 5-0. Moving on, item 11 on the agenda, approval for city to participate in the Concerned Coastal Communities Coalition. And if I could have a staff report.
If I could, back on the October 18th, 2016 meeting, the City Council did consider participation in the Concerned Coastal Communities Coalition. After much discussion, that item was tabled with suggestions that council members attend and learn more about the coalition, and also to explore what the League of California City might have to offer as far as similar types of engagement. Recently, Madam Mayor, you attended a Concerned Coastal Coalition meeting, and you asked for this to be agendized, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments on this? Before I get to the public comments, were there any questions of Mr. Killebrew from council? Okay. First person to speak, Tony Nelson, and next Betty Hill. Ms. Nelson?
Last time, I promise. Good evening. My name is Tony Nelson, resident of Capistrano Beach. I'd like to express my support for the city's participation in the Concerned Coastal Cities Coalition. As co-founder of Capo Cares, I know very well the positive impact of knowing and working with community leaders in our sister cities. Right now, I do an awful lot of work with a group over in San Clemente called San Clemente Cares. And there are also similar groups in San Juan Capistrano, and there are a few people that I work with in Laguna Niguel and also in Laguna Beach. Not only do we share information and bounce ideas off each other, but we often collaborate on particular issues that affect all of us. As sister cities, we share a lot more than just borders. We share issues that are unique to coastal communities. Some of these are unique coastal zoning, coastal commission influence on local development, the San Onofre decommissioning concerns, beach erosion, tourism impacts, including the seasonal population increases that affect our police services and so on, the impact of the state and county parks and the harbor, our dependence financially on TOT and on the tourism economy, the sober living home proliferation, which is much more intense at the coast, coastal bluff landslide risks, ocean pollution and environmental concerns, and the short-term rental ordinances and enforcement. All of these are things that are unique to the cities right along the coast. And I don't think they're shared with cities like Orange and Tustin and, the other inland cities within Orange County. One thing I've learned through years in business and community service is that it's really tough to get things done in meetings with a large group of people. It's sometimes just impossible. Smaller groups are more intimate, they're nimbler, and in general are more adept at problem solving. So even if no other members join the group, just the fact that this group contains San Clemente and Laguna Beach, who are our bordering sister cities, and I think it also includes Seal Beach, and I believe it's Oceanside. These are our neighbors. What a great opportunity. I mean, these are the people we should be talking to, and we should be able to solve some problems and work together on these things. It just makes sense. So while I see the value in participating in the larger group like the League of California Cities, it makes sense. That's a lobbying group. I'd also like to see Dana Point join this smaller coalition. So just as citizens groups work together, I'd really love to see our council working together with its neighbors and working on some of these things. In my opinion, the group has obvious common sense benefits to Dana Point, and the small cost of only $600 per month will be well spent. So I urge you to join the coalition and work on common issues just like we do as citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hill?
Thank you. I'm Betty Hill from Capistrano Beach, and I also urge the council to approve joining the Coastal Communities Coalition for the following reasons. Dana Point is facing many critical issues that are being faced uniquely by other coastal communities. Dana Point can gain from their experiences. Examples are significant problems of beach erosion and ocean pollution from runoff. Our legal expenses are skyrocketing, so avoiding litigation is paramount. Coastal cities are currently and have been involved in significant litigation in subjects of importance to Dana Point, from which we could benefit. Dana Point issues do not necessarily conform to the interests of the majority of cities in Orange County. For example, airport noise over the coastal areas and parts of Dana Point. The impact on the coastal resources of the enormous number of housing units being built in nearby cities, such as on Crown Valley, will be significant. And as a group of cities, the coalition will have more influence even at the county level. Most importantly, Mr. Vasorek would agree, is the role the Coastal Commission will play in Dana Point's residential zoning. It is important to be able to work with other cities to get an approach with the California Coastal Commission that is fair to all. This is a minor cost and a prudent investment in Dana Point's future. So please don't sell Dana Point short. Dana Point can choose to be a leader by joining the coalition or just remain in the shadow of the other Orange County cities. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments on this item?
No, Madam Mayor.
So I will close the public portion of the comments on item number 11. I will just report back on the meeting I attended. It was attended by Laguna Beach, Seal Beach, Huntington Beach, Oceanside, Del Mar, Dana Point. They said Newport Beach generally attends, but they weren't in attendance on this last one. We had a representative from Darrell Ice's office there talking about his proposed changes to the Fair Housing Act. We had the representative from Lisa Bartlett's office there, and a representative of the Association of Coastal Cities, Orange County, who this group, the coalition, works closely with. So even though they meet and discuss and handle issues that are common and unique to the coastal cities, they endeavor to work with other groups and with elected representatives. What we talked about mostly last time was short-term rentals, how the coastal cities are dealing with this problem, what's working, what's not working, how we would want to address it, how to deal with the Coastal Commission, and how to combine our voices so that we can go to the Coastal Commission as opposed to separate cities trying to deal with the Coastal Commission. So I found it to be very informative. I found it to be a group that we could network with, share information, share resources, and I would highly support joining this group. I know it's a new group. I know that there's some trepidation about joining a new group, but I feel like these are people that we would work together with anyway, so if we can get it in a forum where it's organized and we are addressing issues as a group, that we could benefit from that. Any comments? Okay. Okay, Mr. Miller?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't think there's any doubt that I am not in favor of this. I haven't been since it was first introduced to us. This group was founded by a lobby group, the Townsend Group. They office out of the lobbyist office. This is not an organization that I feel was built out of the best interests of cities. It sounds like something that it was like a business generating opportunity. Now the League of Cities has a group that does this exact thing and actually has a coastal commissioner sitting on it. So if you want coastal commission access, there's a coastal commissioner sitting on it. Every issue that you brought up is a coastal issue across the entire state. These are state level issues. These are not just local issues at the county level. And quite frankly, the county's not going to have a lot to say about this. These are all state level issues and coastal commission issues. That's where we need the influence, and that's what the League of California Cities does. And they have a group of people that do this already. You know, you say $600 a month, that's great. Well, that's $7,200 a year. All right, let's say what it is. That's not a small number. We have people come up and complain about numbers smaller than that all the time. I just think this is a duplication of effort. This is a group that I just don't see the merit in it at this point. I think we have an opportunity to engage the league and have that group be part of our mouthpiece. These other cities are also part of the League of California Cities. There's no reason that they can't be part of that, do a Southern Orange County forum and have that group there as well. So, you know, I understand the concerns here. This organization to me, I've had a bad feeling about it from the beginning, and the more I learn about it, and it being, especially it's officed out of a lobbyist office. I mean, I can't support something like that. I don't think it's in the best interest of the city, and it's a duplication of effort.
Thank you. I would just answer to that the League of Cities and the ACCOC are also lobbying groups. However, when you like what they're lobbying for, we call them advocacy groups. So I see this as an advocacy group. I see the others as an advocacy group. They are advocating for our issues. And so, are there any other comments?
I just have a quick question. Are we required to join at this point to continue on going to the meetings? Is there any requirement that we do this at this time?
I don't know if there's a requirement, but I mean, at some point, we can't just keep going to these meetings. I would like to join. I would like to be part. I would like Dana Point to take a lead in the agenda and, you know, moving this group towards resolution or sharing resources on specific issues. So it's just my 2 cents. Mr. Pazorek, do you have a comment?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you all know from reading the staff report and has been mentioned, this was brought to us before, and effectively we killed it at that point. And what we did was said, let's take a look and see what this organization is going to be all about before we join it. We want to see what it's going to do, how much it's going to cost, who's going to be a member of this organization. So at that time, there clearly was not the evidence there, I will say, or the compelling facts that we should join this organization. And that was back in October, I believe. And it's in the staff report. I think it has the meeting agenda. I'm sorry, it was in September of 2016. So I looked at the agenda from February 9th, from the latest one, and I just did a quick reference back and forth to see how this organization is progressing or what has changed since our first decision to make us think that now we should bring this back and join it. But the thing that I found interesting was looking at the 2 agendas, they have the exact same issues on them. Nothing is really changing. This organization is not making any forward progress. Apparently, they're just simply discussing the same issues at every meeting. And, I wonder to myself, what really is the benefit? I know some people may think this is a large number, some may think it's a small number, but it's the city spending money. So we have to look at, is this going to be worth the money that we spend? And I'm having a hard time justifying spending any money on it. I'm waiting to hear the argument what the real value of this organization is. And really the main one I've heard is they're going to advocate removing the spent nuclear fuel from songs. Well, I think I asked this question back in September. Are we having any difficulty communicating what our position is? As a matter of fact, I can't imagine there's any city in California that would support the nuclear fuel remaining there. I think it would be unanimous. So I asked, are we having any trouble communicating that to our congressman, Congressman Issa? And the response then was no, we weren't having any trouble communicating that to him. As a matter of fact, you may all know, Congressman Issa has an office literally 400 feet away from where we're sitting right now. So we have very good access to the congressman's office to get across what exactly we are trying to do as a city. You know, I also looked at the staff report, and I see that I counted them up, there are 9 cities that have been attending, and as of this date, only 4 of them have joined. Again, that does raise the question that, you know, there's a lot of cities that are also not seeing the value in joining this organization. If the only benefit is that we can come together as one voice, I think the point has already been made. We already belong to the League of Cities, that you can get together with other like-minded cities, form subcommittees, and put the whole weight of that organization behind our lobbying efforts, and perhaps even have better access to the Coastal Commission on these issues that we think are important. So I guess just in summary, you know, I was looking for something that would really tell me, no, things have changed with this organization. There is a reason that we should join it. And honestly, I haven't heard that yet. So at this stage, I'm not in support of joining this Coastal Communities Coalition as well. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I do have a question. Can somebody tell me who the Townsend Public Affairs Group is? I'm not too familiar with them. Maybe they can shed some light on that for me. Anybody?
It's a lobbying firm that represents quite a few cities and agencies in the state.
And what do they lobby on specifically? Anything you know?
Issues of concern to the cities that they represent. So they're an advocacy group for various cities to get their agenda and their needs heard before the appropriate elected officials, legislature, that thing. But it's, okay, 2 points in answer to these comments. First, I know that lobbying is something that you're calling it, but I see it more as a way to share resources, information, and work through problems that are unique to the coastal cities as a group. Not necessarily that the lobbying, as you call it, or advocacy is its main point. And second, yeah, I would expect that these issues would be on the agenda more than once. These are very complicated issues. We've been dealing with them for how many years now, and it's still on our agenda. So, you know, by that criteria, we're not successful either. It just takes time when you have complicated issues. And so I would say it wouldn't surprise me to see short-term rental or songs or any of these, you know, or sober living homes on the agenda multiple times, because it's going to take time for us to even resolve and how to deal with these issues. So if there are no other comments, I'm making the motion that the City of Dana Point participate and join the Concerned Coastal Communities Coalition. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, vote. The motion dies by 3 to 2 against. So we will move on to the next item. Council discussion and adoption of a city purchasing policy as proposed by Mayor Lewis. Staff report, please.
Yes, this item was brought forward at the last meeting and laid over to this meeting for further discussion. And at the end of the last meeting, I also encouraged folks to read our current municipal code in regards to purchasing policies, and included in the staff report are attachments that encompass our municipal code, and also a flow chart that we use internally to train staff when it comes to following the city's municipal code in regards to purchasing. If I could put up a slide here, I want to walk through quickly this flow chart that was the last page of the staff report. And it's broken down into 3 sections. 2 sections are on this page. The The top left is for public works projects, basically, and there's a specific definition for public projects in the state code that the city also follows. I want to go ahead and back out now, Mike, and then go to the other box on the top. The second of the three areas are purchasing supplies and equipment, and then we won't have to flip to the next slide, but the third piece we'll cover here in a minute is on professional services procurement. I want to walk through this really quickly, and I'm really going to focus on the right-hand side of this chart that talks about us, what rules we follow for purchasing supplies and equipment. And the decision as you walk through this, and again, this is going to cover the majority of our municipal code when it comes to purchasing, and that's sections 3.12.130 and 12.290, and it's 4 of the 5 sections in that one, A, B, C, and E. Section D we'll cover on the next slide. But right now, the question staff has to ask when we're going to buy something, is it less than $5,000? If it is less than $5,000, there are no informal bidding procedures required. They simply put in a request to the city purchasing agent, who's the administrative services director at this point in time. It's one of the hats I wear. And if it's more than, so there's no not even informal, we don't technically have to ask for even quotes. But staff more often than not asks for quotes just to kind of do a gut check on purchases. Vast majority of the number of transactions we do fall into that arena. If the purchase is more than $5,000, and I'm going to walk through the 3 boxes on the right there really quick. If it's an emergency, we can follow certain rules and ask the city council to ratify later. If it's a sole source, nobody else provides it, we can basically write a memo to file that we scoured the earth looking for multiple providers and there's only one. Therefore, we don't have to go through any kind of a bidding procedure. And then the next question you get to is another threshold. So the first one up on top was, is it less than $5,000? The next question is, if it's more than $5,000, is it less than $35,000? If it is less than $35,000, we go down to the bottom here and we get 3 informal bids, and we choose the least expensive of the 3 bids. If it's more than $35,000, we go to the left there where it says no, and we do formal bids and we bring it to city council. So that's how we buy equipment and supplies that aren't related, if you go all the way out again, Mike, to the public projects, which are basically, in a very simplistic description, these are our facilities and assets the city owns and what we do to protect them as far as maintenance and reconstruction. So again, I want to focus on the right-hand side that I've gone through. The majority of our purchases and number of transactions go through that arena. Now, Mike, if we could switch to the next slide. On this one, this is the section that deals with professional services. So these aren't the widgets. This isn't equipment. This isn't supplies. This is professional services that we contract for. And I've looked around the room. We had a couple of contractors in here earlier that are helping with some of our engineering stuff. We hire contract staff to help with our building services, our planning services, and you go on down the list. These types of items are handled under or managed within our municipal code section 3.12.290 subsection D. Overall, our municipal code does speak to, it is directed toward governing our purchasing and is designed to explicitly establish our procedures and to assure quality of purchases. In regards to hiring professional or consulting personnel services, the one purpose with the code is to obtain the highest quality services together with cost effectiveness. And I'm just going to read straight out of this, is that contracts for professional services per our code may be executed without formal or informal bidding procedures. Requests for proposals may be required by the city manager discretion for contracts under $35,000, and any contract over $35,000 goes to city council. So there's a limit on the amount the city manager can authorize up to, and then over that the city council has to authorize. I will point out that there are many of these types of professional services contracts where the city manager would bring it to the council regardless. Maybe as an example would be the last item that the city manager, where it might be a little more political, might defer to the city council to join a group or not, even though it's within the city manager's authority to execute such an agreement. So there are several of those things. The annual city audit contract is less than $35,000, but we've always brought it to the city council regardless, because it basically rises to that level. So with that, I just wanted to walk through that our current rules that we have to follow are more restrictive than state code, but do protect us as far as the investment we would have to make in staffing to be able to go out to do formal requests for proposals for everything we buy. Literally 90% of our transactions, number-wise, fall within the city manager's purchasing authority, but that only makes up 10% of the actual city spending, where 10% of our transactions that actually rise up to the higher level above the minimum city manager purchasing authority come to the city council. So
Thank you.
with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay. And as we discussed, there could be, this is a policy that is in process, and we could exempt contracts under $35,000 just like this. Now, I understand from talking to you, Mr. Killebrew, that certain contracts between, was it 35 and 100,000, you could bring to the council, or was it over 100,000, you could bring to the council for council approval?
Regardless, everything over 100,000 comes to the city council. If it is a public works, if we're protecting our assets, our maintenance, and it's under 100,000, we've got procedures here that we follow. And let me walk through those anyway, because there is bidding procedures that are requests for proposals that we do underneath the 100,000. So I just want to be clear that if the project is less than 100,000 but greater than 50,000, then we do have to, for these public works types of projects, we do have to get bids. So as you go down to the right-hand side, that orange box that says, is the project less than 100,000 but greater than 25? If it is, then you see we have to get 3 informal bids. And again, these are maintaining our existing assets. It's not building something new. It's not professional services. It's not supplies. It's pretty much maintenance is a way to look at this. So there's still, even under the 100,000 on these, there is still a request for informal bids in this case.
Right, but my question was with regard to the certain contracts, were they over 100,000? They were being brought to the city council to determine whether or not.
If you go down the right-hand side where it says, it's greater than 100,000, then we do formal bidding.
And then obtain contract approval
from the city council.
I understood.
They're for public works projects.
Okay, and then what about the other ones? Because I understand.
For consulting type projects are the ones that it doesn't say there's a formal bidding process. So you go to the back of slide 2, Mike. Our code does not require formal bidding for professional services. City manager can issue contracts under 35,000, and the city council would have authority over 35,000.
Okay, so what I'm hearing then is for every other contract besides professional services contracts, contracts for personal services, professional services, consultant services, and non-public projects. For that category, there is no requirement of informal or formal bidding regardless of the contract amount.
That's correct.
Every other contract either has to go through informal or formal bidding.
Unless it's under $5,000. Yeah, there is the lowest level threshold that just requires the purchasing agent's authority.
Okay, before I get into my thoughts on this, are there comments from public?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, first I have Susan Hinman.
Madam Mayor.
And then Carol Kelly.
Madam Mayor, honorable council people, I am concerned if there are contracts that are ongoing, such as audit contracts or consulting contracts that go, have been approved by an RFP but have gone beyond 5 years. I think that's bad business. And I wish the council to look at that very, very carefully. I've served on boards, and that's a policy. And it's 5 years max that it goes out again for an RFP. I'm just asking you to look at that, because I think we get ourselves into trouble with getting sweetheart deals over a long period of time if we're not looking at that very, very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you could just tell for the record where you reside. You're a Dana Point resident?
I'm a 48-year resident of Dana Point.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Hinman.
And real quick, Madam Mayor, the city council did direct that our audit go out to bid every 5 years.
And Ms. Kelly, Carol Kelly?
I was asked to read this letter from Maria Miller, who is the general manager of Niguel Shores Community Association, who is a Dana Point resident and is familiar with best practices of community associations, and Steve Stewart, former Niguel Shores president of the board of directors and former Niguel Shores CFO. I was asked to read this letter for them since right now they're both out of town on business and unable to attend the meeting. My name is Carol Kelly, and I'm a 25-year resident of Dana Point. Okay. Putting vendor contracts out to bid is an ongoing practice at Niguel Shores Community Association. While we do not have the magnitude of contracts that the city of Dana Point has, we do believe it is important to go out to bid on significant contracts at least every 5 years, and in certain instances, will put vendor contracts out to bid every 3 years. Although it can be an involved process, there are several reasons we want to go out to bid on medium and large contracts. Number one, it provides us with competitive pricing and quality services. We are not just looking for the cheapest product, and we do not always take the lowest bid. We are, however, looking at the best pricing and quality services. Vendors get state competitive circumstances can change pricing quickly. Number two, there may be some instances where a current provider has performed adequately for a long time, but certain aspects of their duty get overlooked. Going out to bid is a wake-up call, and they will either step up and increase the productivity or lose the contract. Number three, a new bidder may bring a new technology to the process of familiar work. In one instance, we saved at least $500,000 over several years by substituting a new vendor with specific industry knowledge. They eliminated a lot of budgeted consulting and construction expense by supplying their expertise for free as a condition of the contract and because they were a superior party to contract with. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'd just like to correct the record. I believe her name is Marla Miller, not Maria.
Oh, it is, I'm sorry, M-A-R-L-A, Marla Miller.
Yeah, I believe
And
she's the Niguel Shores
General
HOA
manager.
yeah.
Niguel Shores.
Thank you.
And Steve Stewart.
If I could clarify also, we get quotes for everything we buy over $5,000, and over $35,000 we get formal bids, and bring those to council for general purposes, or for general purchases. And then for the public works projects, we get the informal bids between 25 and 100. So it's not like we are not getting quotes from multiple vendors. We are. But I just want to be clear, this isn't, it's not the Wild West here where we're just out buying whatever we want to buy. There are processes that we follow all the way down to, I get to ask stupid questions like, Why are we spending what we're spending on per bag for doggy poop bags? There's a lot of scrutiny that's put into our purchases to try and get the best deal we can, so.
And I truly appreciate staff's efforts. And there was no implication on my part by this policy that there was anything but. However, the professional services contracts, contracts for personal services, professional and consultant services, and non-public projects and contractual services do not get put through that process. My thought here was we're a policy-making board. I would like to see a policy implemented, and it can conform with what we already do, but I would like to see that policy apply to all contracts between the city and a third-party vendor, not employees, but third-party vendor, not W-2 employees. And we could exempt contracts under $35,000, just as we have done here. We can say contracts between $35,000 and $100,000 go through the informal bidding process, so that, you know, we don't have to make this a a major deal for that, and that 100,000 or more could go through a formal bid process. And we're only talking every 5 years, and when we get it down to that level, we're only talking about 10% of our vendors. So it's not that we're every 5 years we're not adding, you know, a workload to the staff that I feel would be that would overburden them. And this would make it a policy. So when a contract is brought here, do we bring it out to bid? Do we not bring it out to bid on one of these exempted items? We don't have to sit here as a council and debate, you know, oh, should we, shouldn't we? And then we get into, well, you know, these people are friends with those people. And I'm not saying that that's happening here, but it takes all that away. It just makes it a policy. Every contract goes through the same policy, and that was my thought. It wasn't directed at any vendor, any person, anything. It just takes away all of the issues of, well, I don't want to put it out to bid because then, you know, we're going to give impressions that, you know, we're not happy. It can come back to the same contractor. But again, as I have heard our speakers bring up, it gives us the opportunity to see what's out there, compare, and make sure we are getting the best value for our dollar. And that was my thought process and the reason that I have put this on the agenda. Any questions from council?
Yeah, I have some questions, Mr. Killebrew. The way the request for proposals policy is written now, it would include a lot of the things that we've talked about tonight. And you mentioned additional staff time. Can you, and that piqued my interest a little bit. We'd have to hire people too?
Well, if we're talking about the draft that was included in the staff report as far as a policy, I think that we would have to add a couple staff to be able to pull together the details of requests for proposals that would have to be put out to potential vendors, and then to evaluate their responses. The way that it's being framed now is a lot more narrow, and would be a limited, in my experience. I'm looking at last year's contracts where we spent more than $100,000. The scope of what's being asked for is, as far as the level of effort that might be required by staff, it got reduced more than significantly. It's a very small number of contracts.
Any other questions? Okay, well, I will then, since it's my agenda item, I'll make my motion that we approve a policy that will apply to all contracts between the city of Dana Point and third-party vendors, not any W-2 employees who happen to have contracts. Under $35,000, we will exempt those from any informal or formal bidding process. Contracts between $35,000 and $100,000 would be put out for informal bid, just as the city does now in accordance with its municipal code.
If I could bifurcate the public works section of that and keep it separate from the equipment And if I can keep the same 3 sections and you speak to each one specifically, I think if I'm hearing right, if I heard right earlier, that I'm not hearing in the words being put forth, it was you're targeting that second slide, Mike, I don't know if you can put it up, that talks about the professional, the consulting services, not the widgets, because the widgets were already going through all the processes you covered. So it's this one, if you could aim out, and this is the section 3.12.290D. You're asking to amend that. That would require some form of request for proposals go out on a mandatory basis at least every 5 years. And this is a very limited number. I actually asked for some clarification also. So some of the things that might fall into this arena when it comes to services, I kind of wrote them down, would be like our sheriff's contract, and going out to bid on that every 5 years may not be something you intend here. Our contract with our public employee retirement system is also something that's been there longer than 5 years. We spend more than $100,000. It's professional services. May not be something you would ask us to be going to put an RFP out and to go look for a new pension system, or maybe it is. Certainly some of the other services that we receive that aren't widgets would be all of our utility bills that we, there's one vendor that we can get electricity from. There's some JPIA, Joint Powers Authorities that we're members of that I don't think fall under this arena, but that we pay more than $100,000 to for animal shelter, animal services, or insurance. And then the last category would be legal services that aren't city employees, as you put it, as far as personnel type related services that we don't put out to bid, that are under the purview of the city council directly, that the city staff doesn't go out and produce any kind of bids for those. So those are the areas. It's basically county contracts under our current code or contracts with other government agencies are exempt. So I'm hoping that you say they're still exempt, or maybe not, but my recommendation would be to keep them as being exempt, that they not include utilities where there's actually a sole source, that we could certainly write a memo to file that, San Diego Gas and Electric is the only player in town for their services.
Okay, so
we're down to the legal bills.
Okay, so here's what I would recommend then, that I will make a motion to postpone item 12 to a time certain, being the next city council meeting, when I will redraft a purchasing policy based on input from Mr. Killebrew. And at that time, we can take it up and determine whether it is a policy that the city want to adopt or not. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second it.
Vote?
Step down for discussion, right?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got some concerns about this. I mean, we've gone round and round today, and we're making major changes to this, and we haven't really looked at how other municipalities or the county handles this in particular. I mean, I've talked to the county about theirs. I mean, you mentioned you talked to Supervisor Bartlett about the county going out every 5 years. When I spoke with her, she had some issues with that policy, and they're trying to change it right now. And even further, there are a lot of exemptions in that policy. And right now, we're kind of doing this broad stroke. We're just going to go out and do this. I think we need to have a better understanding of how other cities do this, how the county does it, how the state does it. And I don't think a week is long enough to figure that out, quite frankly. I mean, if we're going to postpone this thing, I don't think a week is long enough to do that. And we have to have a discussion about, are we going to allow exemptions? Mr. Killebrew brought up legal services. You didn't mention that, and maybe that's why you're wanting to postpone it. But I think we need to have a better understanding of what this policy is really going to do and how it's going to affect the city. Because right now, it seems like a solution without a problem. I mean, it seems like everything's working well. We don't have a problem with extended contracts right now. And I understand that you want to make a policy to make sure we never have that problem, but I think we better have a better understanding of what that policy is really going to incorporate.
And how long do you feel you need to do your research to vote on this motion?
It would have to be at least a month.
Would a month give you, would you feel adequately prepared after a month?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Mr. Tomlinson?
Madam Mayor, just a couple of comments. I don't really see a system here that's broken. Mr. Killebrew, are you comfortable with the system we've been using? Is it, tell me where the problem lies.
If there was a problem, it would have been fixed. So I haven't identified a problem. And just a little bit of background, early in my career, I was an auditor. Later in my career, I installed the purchasing system for a very large city. And further on, right before I got here for a few years, I had a purchasing division that reported to me that bought everything for a city of 500,000 people. And I think the rules that are in place for this size of a city are appropriate, and I think there are appropriate controls in place. Having said that, at a policy level, I kind of see where the mayor's going when it comes to, kind of the backstop. I don't see what she's adding here as far as, and I'm only speaking from the logistics part of doing purchasing. I don't see that what she's asking to add here is going to have a major impact on staff level of work. As far as the level of benefit that might come from changing the policy to incorporate this, I'm not sure. I actually see that as more of a policy call than something that I would be looking for some kind of a correction of something that's wrong, because I'm not seeing it. I mean, literally, we've only got a couple of areas that this would affect. So logistically, not a big change. And again, I think it's more of a policy call. And if you as a body see that a benefit in making the change, then you obviously support it.
Anything further?
That answers my question.
Thank you.
One more question.
Mr. Miller?
Mr. Killebrew, how many contracts are we talking about that this is going to affect?
Well, earlier this afternoon, I ran a report for all of our expenditures last fiscal year. So all of our funds amounted to about $39.5 million. And what she's asking for, when I look at I sorted it by dollar amount. So everything over $100,000, and I'm picking out the ones that I can identify that I know there wasn't a RFP process that was gone through. Again, it was that handful that I mentioned. It's contracts with the County of Orange. We had one last year with Motorola to buy radios for our police operations. That it was a sole source, because those are the ones that work with their backbone system. 2 contracts with law firms, our PERS payments, utilities, and then the JPIA for our insurance and the animal shelter. So it's a very small, I mean, literally, if we had to go out and do an RFP on this, assuming that you would keep the same exemptions for government services, I'm literally down to legal services that this would affect. Given last year's expenditures, I can't say what future expenditures might be, but everything else falls within one of the categories generally of us soliciting some input as far as costs. I mean, Opticos might be one where we would have sole sourced and come to the council, that there might not have been other agencies out there that could have handled form-based code, but I think there are. I don't recall that discussion. So there are some specialty services that we're going to run into, but I think you start debating, is it sole source? Because you're hiring the services and skill sets of individuals, if you will, or firms. And if there's multiple firms that do it, we would generally try and talk to multiple, those that can provide it, looking for, a price and a fit. So given last year's expenditures, it's law firms. Future, I don't know.
So we're talking about one contract?
2. We had Richards, Watson, Gershon.
Well, 2 legal contracts.
That assisted with some of the Headlands settlement negotiations.
So we're going to create a policy to handle 2 contracts.
Today. a policy is for all time. It's not to be any particular contract or any snapshot. It is a policy. I just personally think this is a policy, and I guess I would turn the argument around if it's not really going to affect many contracts, and it's what we do anyway, then the policy does no harm. So I would say, you know, if that's the logic, then it's a policy that seems to be consistent with what we're doing, just more inclusive.
Well, again, when I talk to the county, they exempt all their legal contracts. That's an exemption. I mean, we're talking about a policy, that we're talking about a contract that other agencies exempt.
Okay.
So now we're talking, you know.
So that's the policy question that we.
Yeah, I mean,
that we
I
put
agree,
before
but,
this board.
I mean, that's, you know.
So I will then, in deference to your requirement of a month, I would amend my motion to postpone item 12, adoption of city purchasing policy, for a time certain being 1 month. Is that the March 21st? Till March 21st, I will take another stab at writing the policy, and we can vote on it at that time. Do I have a second? Mr.
I'll second that.
Mayor Pro Tem, thank you. Any discussion? Vote? Motion carries by a vote of 4 to 1. This item, item 12, adoption of a city purchasing policy as proposed, will be postponed until March 21st, at which point I will have rewritten the policy, and we can discuss it and vote on it at that meeting. Item 13, 2017 special events calendar.
I'm going to let Mark
Staff
Denny,
report?
I'm going to let Mark Denny talk for a little while.
We're pleased to present to you the special event calendar for 2017. I do want to point out that there is one date correction in action document A, which is the Sabroso event is now planned for April 8th, not April 22nd. We were recently made aware of that.
Is there any public comment on this?
No, Madam Mayor.
And is there action that we're being asked to take today? Other than approving it?
Oh, yes, approving the calendar as well as approving the contracts that are included in the item for the support of the special events, the city-sponsored special events.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't.
And we did
Oh, there
solicit
we go.
3
Okay.
bids for those
Okay,
services.
so I see that there's 2 action items. I'm sorry, that was my mistake. Okay, so the first one is to approve the special event calendar for 2017 and the recommended venues. Do I have a motion on that?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Vote? Motion carries by a vote of 5-0. The 2017 special events calendar has been approved, and for the special events of 2017 and the recommended venues. The second item we're being asked to approve with respect to the 2017 special events calendar is to authorize the city manager to execute the 3 separate stage and sound contracts to Southern California Sound Stage and Lighting Corporation for the Festival of the Whales concert, for the Dana Point Summer Concert Series, and for the Relay for Life. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Vote? Okay, motion carries 5-0, and the city manager is hereby authorized to execute the 3 separate contracts for the stage and the sound contracts to Southern California Sound Stage and Lighting Corporation for the Festival of the Whales concert, Dana Point Summer Concert Series, and the Relay for Life. Moving on to item 14, amendment of consultant services agreement by and between the city and VCA Code Group. Do I have staff report?
Yes, ma'am. The agreement before you is for as-needed plan check services with our building group. Our current staffing levels, given the level of activity that we're seeing as far as development submittals and remodels and everything else that comes to our building services counter, exceed and have been exceeding our base staffing capacity for some time. What we're asking for is an amendment to an existing contract that was $100,000 to take us through the end of this fiscal year, which would be to add $50,000 to that contract. And with that, we're available to answer questions.
And can you just explain for people why we're amending this and adding an additional 50?
Ursula's chopping at the bit, but I know I grilled Mark on this pretty much monthly. Mark Sutton, sit down, Mark. We've got a lot of projects that come through, and we do contract, particularly for some of the more specialty work, so that is reimbursed by developer fees. So you might see like a Majestic project. We would likely contract out some of the review of the plans for those. We also contract out for combination building inspector work. It's basically workload that's either specifically maybe exceeding some of our staff's expertise. It's not uncommon for us to hire folks that have experience in some larger cities that have larger scale developments that we might not normally see, like, for instance, a major remodel of a hotel or some more complicated housing projects like we see down in the Strands. So it's specific to projects that are coming through the pipeline that we're able to reach out to some of our consulting groups to pick off or acquire, if you will, for short periods of time, specific skill sets.
Okay. And these fees are all paid by applicants?
Yes.
If I may, Madam Mayor, just add that primarily this contract is for plan check services. So this is for people submitting plans to the building department, and many of the buildings need structural engineering to review them. We do have a structural engineer on staff, but we have one. So South Shores Church is in, that's a big renovation project. Gloria Day's been in, that's been plan check, but now is in the inspection phase. So on the plan check services, when we contract out, they get a percentage of the fee that we collect. We're able to keep a little bit of that for overhead, but on plan check particularly, we do get that the applicant pays for that. So I did want to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do I have any public comment?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so the recommended action is that the City Council authorize the acting city manager to execute an amendment called the First Amendment to the agreement for consultant services by and between the City of Dana Point and VCA Code Group, Inc. Do I have a motion?
I have a question, Madam Mayor.
Oh, sorry. Mr. Tomlinson?
Mr. Killebrew, as an example of how our proposals work in our item a couple ago for the request for proposals, can you put up that chart and show us how this particular item got before the City Council?
I could speak to, this is under the consultant services portion, so I know Mark went out and got quotes from various consulting firms to see what their hourly rates were for different levels of staffing, and then within that, we may not pick the lowest. What we're looking for is, obviously, it's got to be price competitive, but we're reaching out and asking for resumes of individuals, and we're hiring the individual skill sets. And we are looking at costs, but we're looking for specific individuals with the experience we need to get the specific job done that we've got before us. You flow through this, and this, again, there's not a requirement that we do a quote RFP, but we would get quotes for hourly rates by specific positions.
If I may add, on plan check services in particular, it's a percentage of what we collect, and it's the same for all the firms. And we have more than just this one plan check firm, and they all get the same deal for plan check. Hourly rates might vary from inspection rates if we need to bring on an inspector or something like that, but primarily these contracts are for plan check services, and they all get the same deal. So it doesn't make sense to do an RFP for that particular component.
And this rate, I assume, is competitive with all of our other plan check.
Correct. They all get the exact same deal.
Oh,
yes.
Same rate. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions?
That answers my question. Thank
Sorry,
you.
I didn't mean to ignore you there. Okay. Anything else? All right, so the motion before the group, the council, is approval of the First Amendment to the agreement between the City of Dana Point and VCA Code Group and authorizing the city manager to execute that amendment. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, vote. Motion carries 5-0, so city manager, you're hereby authorized to execute the First Amendment to the agreement for consultant services by and between the City of Dana Point and VCA Code Group, Inc. Item 15.
Madam Mayor, I'm going to have to recuse myself from this item. It's close to my family's vacation home.
Thank you. We will wait for Mr. Tomlinson to leave. Okay, moving on to item 15, a report of an offer of dedication of assessor parcel number 691-192-15. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, Madam Mayor. This item before you is an offer, an unsolicited offer that the city received to purchase a series of lots that are along the bluff face adjacent to Pacific Coast Highway and Capistrano Beach. There's a photograph, an aerial photograph that kind of delineates the properties in question. Staff's recommendation is that we reject the offer. We just don't see any realistic public use for the property, and bluntly, there's potential liabilities associated with owning land in that area where there's historical slide activity. So that's our recommendation. Happy to answer any questions.
Yes, thank you. Any questions of staff? Yes, Mr. Vazorek.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have one question. I was reading the letter from the attorney offering us this land, and I read the last sentence, well, the last paragraph. The purpose of this correspondence is to offer fee simple ownership of the slope property of the City of Dana Point without charge. In the interim, as you evaluate this offer, which we're doing now, the slope property may be sold to a third party, and such buyer may contact you about such dedication offer. I guess my first question is, has the property been sold to a third party?
Not that we're aware of.
No, okay. And what was the purpose of that, at least in your interpretation, that if it were sold, that the offer was withdrawn, or that we would then sell it to the person interested in it, or what? Did you have any discussions with the attorney what that meant?
I did not.
Okay.
I just read it on face value that he just wanted to let us know that they're marketing the property and we may hear from people. It's a little bit odd because we don't really need permission to talk to people if they come to the counter, but it's his letter.
Okay, I guess that answers my question. Thank you.
Any further questions? Hearing none. I would ask, is there a motion on this?
I'll move the
Mr.
recommended
Broussard?
actions.
Second?
I'll second.
Mr. Wyatt, very good. Any discussion? Vote. Oh, wait a second, just so I make this clear. So if we vote, so the recommended action is that the City Council reject the offer of dedication dated January 10, 2017 of the slope property APN 691-192-15 by Lee Sang-Ti and Betty Wu Lee, 2008 Dynasty Trust number 1, number 2, and number 3, so that if we vote yes, we are rejecting. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now we can vote. Okay, the motion carries 4-0, and the offer of dedication of that parcel is rejected. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Item 16, Financial Review Committee Member Designation and Update. Do we have staff report?
Yes, Madam Mayor, quick update. At the last meeting, the council did designate 5 members to the Financial Review Committee, and subsequent to that, we did learn that one of the designees has decided to withdraw his name given family and business commitments. A new member has been designated by Councilmember Miller, and that person is Mr. William or Brian Porter. So part of tonight is for you basically to receive and file the receipt of that name. And then I also wanted to go further and say that we do have our first meeting scheduled for next week, February 27th. We have an exciting afternoon planned for the new committee to get started with their work.
Great. And that meeting is open to the public or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Mr. Tomlinson?
No, I don't have a question.
Oh, sorry. I was so anxious that you get to talk. So the recommended action is that we receive and file the name of Mr. Miller's member appointee to the Financial Review Committee. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Seconded.
Any discussion or debate? Then let's vote. Motion carries 5-0. Mr. Miller's appointee is now a member of the Financial Review Committee, and I'm pleased to say the first meeting will be February 27th. And public is welcome to attend. Were there any other public comments? Any further staff reports?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Miller, do you have any reports to make here about meetings you've attended?
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to say thank you to OCFA. As you all know, we got hit by a storm named Lucifer on Friday, and we had 635 calls for service on Friday alone. That's 75% above a normal day. And we were able to meet all of those calls. I don't know if they went out and unclogged drains for people or not, but they were there. I just want to give a shout out to how good our guys are. You saw it tonight, you know, the level of service that OCFA provides the city. And I just want to give a shout out for that. Thanks. And did I turn my meetings into you already? I can't remember. All right, I will do that.
Thank you.
Maybe I need to get in on that Alzheimer's thing. What's that number?
Thank you, Mr. Wyatt. Anything to report?
I don't. I have submitted my list of meetings to the city clerk.
Thank you. Mr. Tomlinson?
Nothing to report. I will give my list of the meetings to the clerk subsequent to this meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Vazorek?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one thing very quickly. I attended the meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Orange County Mosquito and Vector Control District. I think this is good news. They gave a presentation on the high-risk 9, the 9 cities in Orange County with the most mosquito problems. We were not on it, so that's a good thing. However, they did caution us that mosquitoes move around, and it may only be a matter of time, so we need to be vigilant about trying to keep mosquitoes out of our homes and clearing any standing water in your backyard to keep them from breeding. So I just want to remind people of that, and otherwise I will turn in my list of meetings after this meeting. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And I've already reported on the Coastal Communities meeting that I attended, and I will turn in the rest of my meetings to you. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So
Madam
moved.
Mayor,
Yeah.
got some staff reports for you this evening.
Oh, still more staff. I thought I asked for those. I have to ask again, huh? All right, sorry.
Misunderstood. I thought you meant staff
It's
reports
going
on
to take
agenda
me a
items.
couple times to get into the procedure here. Okay. Do
I
I
just
have a
want-
staff report?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to report for the council and for the public that we've had some developments on the sober living litigation that we've been involved in on behalf of the city. Beachside Recovery, which is on Santa Clara, is one of the ones we've talked about before. Mentioned that we were in litigation because they had some CUP violations utilizing two properties on, or two structures on the property for two different sort of independent six-person operations. They have now had their license reduced to only 6 people. We are still in litigation with them, but the license has now been modified towards that end. In addition, we have 2 new cases on file, one involving, my name's right, New Method Wellness, and another involving Sunshine Behavioral Health. New Method Wellness has 3 properties in Capistrano Beach, and Sunshine Behavioral Health has one property in Capistrano Beach. So we're dealing with 4 different homes. And again, these are similar to the prior lawsuits that we brought. The theory is that they are not licensed homes, and they should be. And so we're pursuing them for basically operating in a manner that's inconsistent with the licensing laws. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. And I do apologize to you, Mr. Munoz. You did tell me you wanted to make that report, and all right, Mr. Miller, I'll go with you. Any other? Maybe, yeah. They might have, but I've forgotten it. Any other reports that I need to do? Okay. So now, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Come on.
Second, but I'll second it anyways.
Second it. All right, well, I'll go for it. We are now adjourned.